Get ready. You're listening to Give God 90 live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And there we are, live and in person on a Thursday night. Welcome, everyone, to Give God 90. My name's Jerry Mitchell. Myra's sitting right here beside me for the folks on the podcast outlets that can't see her. By the way, don't forget podcast outlets. Just about every one we have now covered. We're even on SoundCloud. Don't forget YouTube. All
Hi,
that
Pam.
good stuff. There's Pam joining us tonight. Good to see her. What else was I going to mention? Okay. I'll go to website first. Don't forget to go to givegod90.com. There's all kinds of good stuff there if you haven't done so, for all the new folks, because we're getting more people all the time. Please don't be afraid that you can order the books from Amazon. They're still available, all right? And then they'll still send them to you. It might just take a little longer now. Either Tradition to Truth or God's Universe, God's Rules. Going to talk a little bit about what's in God's Universe, God's Rules here in a little while. There's actually another book out. He's not joined us yet, but Dr. Sean, there's Robin's watching. Dr. Sean often joins us. His new book is available on Amazon as well. It is the Bible Summary for Real People. Very good read. And the things that go along with that as well. And he does, from time to time, when he's feeling up to it, a Facebook Live. And he's also on Spreaker. I don't know, is it still the Ninja Doctor or is it Dr. Sean? I'm not sure which it is, but it's there.
I don't know.
Does that have all the advertising out of the way so I can get going? Because I got a lot of territory to cover tonight. I mean, we got a lot of things going on. Just saying. We got a lot of stuff going on, and it's not all good stuff. There's Jay and then the family.
And Carol and Tina.
Yep. And who knows who else is listening in with them. So we just love to hear you. For the folks on the listening on audio only on Spreaker, don't be afraid to chime in. You know, I glanced down at that screen too. I try to keep an eye on both. I had some disturbing news this week about food supply, not just in the United States, but around the world, because it's going to affect everybody. And what they're trying to do is convince farmers and ranchers to destroy food. Mm-hmm. And they say, we can't get it in the packing houses. There's just nobody there to work. Nothing's happening. And you've got to destroy, by euthanization, smothering chickens or euthanizing cattle and hogs.
Like chicken's going to expire in a week.
Yeah, as long as you keep feeding them.
Keep it for another week or two.
So you don't fry them. They're good for stew. They're good for other things. Fattened cattle, you know what? You can... Worked in this industry for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Sure did.
If you miss the prime fattened cattle, you level out their feed, you do what you need to do, they can stay there for quite a while until the packing houses come back online and clear out. Don't understand the whole packing house thing anyway. They say they need to shut down for deep cleaning. That's done at the end of every shift, folks.
It is. And if it's not being done,
you don't want to eat what comes out of there anyway. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet, Jay. I'm going to be wound up here in a minute. I had an interesting thing happen to me yesterday. I went to get gas put it in the truck, got cans for the mowers and other equipment we have around here. And Delaware has a new thing where you have to wear a face mask, right? More on this in a little bit. Stick with me. You're going to like this. Where I went, where I went was a place where there's several gas pumps and an older lady who was at least 2 islands, so that's probably 30 or 40 feet away from me, began to walk towards me, and she said, "Sir, you need to be wearing a mask on your face." And I politely said, ma'am, you need to be minding your own business. Was not harsh to her. Not at all. And she said, well, it's for everyone's safety. And I looked, and she was wearing shoes that you actually had to bend down and tie. The shoelaces on her shoes were tied. And I said, well, ma'am, tell me, did you tie your shoes this morning? She said, yes, I did. Did you, by any chance, wash your hands as soon as you were done tying your shoes? No. Did you disinfect your shoes when you took them off last night? No. You could see the light bulb go off in her head. It finally clicked that she had dirty shoes. She's tying. Now, I can just imagine putting your shoes on and going out of the house, right? You put your shoes on. You put your mask on. What have you just done? You've just contaminated yourself. Mm-hmm. She's her own source of contamination, and she recognized this. The look on her face was, she was terrified at that point. She was scared to death. But she turns around and walks away. Lesson learned, right? I hope.
I hope.
We have witnessed people, for some reason, driving in cars by themselves
with their mask on.
Not sure why.
Not a good idea, people.
We've also seen, now I haven't seen this because I haven't been into a medical facility, but we've seen pictures coming out of medical facilities where nurses, therapists, doctors are wearing their personal protection gear wrong. They're wearing their personal protection equipment wrong.
Well, it's because that's all they've been given.
Well, that's not all. Some of it's their own.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it doesn't fit properly. They don't know how to fit it properly. The thing is, if you're going to wear it, do it properly. I only know of one person, personally, who actually does the decontamination when they get home from being out properly. He was in the military. He was trained to do it. He listens to this show from time to time. He knows what he's doing. He's been through hazmat decon training several times. He knows what he's doing. You've been through it. You know what you're doing. But just being part of the veterinary aspect of it, you know, I know how to keep animals clean. I know how not to get contaminated from animals. It's not rocket science, but it has to be done properly if you're going to take it serious. News story today, people are beginning to be admitted in hospitals with flat-out pneumonia. Mm-hmm. Not COVID pneumonia, just plain everyday pneumonia.
Young people, 30 to 50 years old. Why?
Because they're breathing their own bacteria. It's recirculating the expelled carbon dioxide, recirculating back into their lungs with the air they're breathing into these masks. When we think about wearing a face mask, here's what you've got to remember. The doctors wear them for surgery, not to protect themselves, to protect the patient. Mm-hmm. They're trained. There's a certain amount of time you wear them. There's a certain way you fit them. They all have to be fitted. They come in different sizes. You know this because every year you had to qualify.
Right.
So for the average person to come out here and say, oh, I'm going to wear a face mask, I'm protected, gives you, number one, a false sense of security. More on this later. But they also, yeah. I hear you, Jay. I hear you. It gives them a false sense of security. They think they're going to be fine, and when they wind up with an ailment, who's going to pay that bill? Because the states, hey, there's Deb. I bet Daryl's watching too.
Hi, Deb.
Because when the state says you have to do something, it's mandated, right? The governor of Maryland is mandating everybody's got to be checked and tested. Well, if they're going to test everybody for COVID-19, are they going to test everybody for syphilis and gonorrhea and chlamydia and all these other things that they've got going on? Corona is not the only virus we have affecting our health in the world right now. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're in Maryland. Sorry. I feel your pain. Deb just, for the folks on the podcast, Deb just said she's in Maryland. Maryland's one of the few places I know of where if you don't live there, more on this later too, if you don't live there, you get to pay for the privilege of working there. Okay? They tax you for working there. Why do I get so riled up about dumb stuff like this? Because it is irritating to me. It really is. And it ought to be irritating to everybody who hears this. Now, we have people listening all around the world. Not everybody that hears this lives in a country as free as the United States.
Right.
And they look at us for guidance. They really, truly do. They look at us and they say, well, we can't do the things. We have to do things. Why is it that we are so willing to give up what we've got? Mm-hmm. Could you imagine? Now picture this. The disciples 2,000 years ago lived in an occupied territory. They were basically a nation being ruled by another nation. Okay, mm-hmm. That's an occupied territory. They could not speak freely. But look at what they were able to accomplish. Could you imagine if they had the First Amendment in Jerusalem and the surrounding area of Judea and Samaria 2,000 years ago? Look what they did meeting in secret. Think about what they could have done if they could have spoken freely, had freedom of assembly, done all of these things. Mm-hmm. Which leads me to a continuation where we left off last week. Because there were now about 4 people who said, I don't really agree with what you said. Which is fine. I encourage people not to agree with everything I say. But please have a biblical reason why you don't, because everything I'm telling you is coming from a biblical standpoint where I have attempted to provide at least 2 witnesses out of Scripture. Now, some people like to make the argument that, well, I'm a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. I'm above all of this stuff that's going on in the United States right now. I don't really want to partake in that. Let me tell you why that's dangerous. It is impossible for people who hear my voice and can turn on their computer or whatever, their phone, whatever they're listening on, and be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. Why is that?
Because heaven doesn't have any electronics, for one.
Well, that's two. They're living. If you're a living, True. Breathing person, you cannot be a citizen of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. Now, the first time I heard about being a citizen of the kingdom was about 1979 or 80 or 81, somewhere in that time frame. But then I didn't think much about it. I heard it again from a pastor this time in the late 80s who had been a Marine. And in one of his sermons, he said, I helped citizens of the United States, help people become citizens of the United States as a Marine chaplain. And he was going through and telling people about it. He says, but now I consider myself not necessarily a citizen of the United States, but a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. And that just didn't set well with me. Leah's watching. Good to see you, Leah.
Hi, Leah.
So as I'm thinking about all of these things,
and everybody else in the house,
I'm looking at this situation, and I remember Paul. Hey, there's Carol. I remember Paul saying Carol? In 1 Corinthians 15:50, "This I say, flesh and blood cannot enter the kingdom." You can't be a citizen of the kingdom. You can desire to be, and I hope you do. You can desire to be a citizen of the kingdom. You can want to go there. You can want to go live there. But flesh and blood cannot enter the kingdom. It's always going to be just out of hand. Now, something else we can look at. This isn't just a New Testament concept. David understood this in 2 Samuel 12:23. Remember that David and Bathsheba's child has just died. David's been in mourning the whole time he was sick. The child dies. David gets dressed. He eats. And they're confused. They're saying, wait a minute, David. Wait a minute. The child was sick, but he was still alive, and you're in mourning. That doesn't make sense to us. The child dies, you eat, you get cleaned up, you're done mourning. Why? What's going on? David understood. And in 2 Samuel 12:23 says, now he's dead. Why should I fast? Why should I not eat? Can I bring him back? I shall go to him, but he cannot return to me. You see, a citizen is, or even a subject of a kingdom, has a certain amount of ability to go and come, right? Mm-hmm. We can't go there. We can't come back. We can, well, let me say it a different way. We can go there, but we can't come back. We don't have the freedom to work back and forth because flesh and blood cannot enter the kingdom. Dual citizenship. Your sister knows something about this. She was born on the island of St. Lucia, right? She has a dual citizenship. But what does that mean? Well, according to the State Department of the United States, and I wish Sean was listening, according to the State Department of the United States, if you have a dual citizenship like that, you are responsible for obeying the rules of both countries, both nations. Well, that's kind of hard to do, isn't it? It's really, really, really hard to do because St. Lucia is still a British Isle.
Right.
Are you going to be a subject of Queen Elizabeth and a citizen of the United States? How do you choose? What are you going to do? You can't go back and forth. James addresses this. Very harshly does James address this. In James 1, 5 through 8. If you lack wisdom, ask God, that he gives to all men liberally, and he doesn't hold anything back. He will give you wisdom in this. Let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that waves back and forth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind, and it's tossed. Let no man think that he's going to receive anything from the Lord who does that. Because in verse 8, here it is, a double-minded man is unstable in his ways. Oh my. That's not just a New Testament concept either. Elijah. Remember when Elijah, he's down there, he's being hammered by Jezebel, he's being hammered by these other priests, and he finally, in 1 Kings 18:21, he says, look, how long are you people gonna falter between two opinions? How long are you going to do this? We are called to overcome evil with good. That's in Proverbs 25:21. Yeshua tells us to do the same thing in Matthew. He says, look, if your enemy's hungry, you feed him. If he's thirsty, you give him something to drink. When you do this, it's going to be like pouring hot coals on their head because they're not going to know how to deal with it. You're not going to know how to understand it. But the thing is, if you consider yourself living here, okay, and enjoying all the freedoms that we still have while we have them, in the United States anyway, or enjoying the things that you enjoy whatever country you're in, and you say, well, I'm not a citizen of this country, I'm a citizen of the kingdom, you have just renounced your citizenship. And if you live in the United States, do you know what that means? That means you give up your right to vote. That means you give up your right to own a firearm. That means you give up your right to drive a car. That whatever comes with it, you give up. You now are taxed at a different level, just like the disciples in first century Jerusalem, taxed at a different rate than the citizens of Rome were taxed. Don't think for a moment that you're getting away with anything. You've got to give up your right to complain. You don't like President Trump? Too bad you don't get to fuss about it anymore if you're not longer a citizen of the United States. Don't be double-minded. Make up your mind. You cannot live in two places at the same time. It's impossible. So make up your mind. What are you going to do? You have to live here. The disciples realized that. They understood that. There was nothing that they wanted more than to be able to have the freedom to go about their business of bringing people into this new way. This way that incorporates not only what they understood as Judaism at the time, but something even better, something even greater than what they had. They understood what they had. They had to do it in secret. There's countries around the world today that have to do it in secret. And you know what, folks? And I know I'm talking to mostly Christians here, and that's fine. That's fine. Here is the thing. Christianity and even Judaism is growing at a faster rate in these foreign occupied countries than it is in the United States.
That's right, it is.
That's just sad. Now, here's something that I want to be very careful about how I approach this. I do not want you to think I am comparing wearing a mask as a mark of the beast that we find in Revelation. I'm talking to mostly now Christians who live in certain states of the United States, where they are told, you have to wear a mask. If you're out in public, you have to wear a mask. We don't care if it works. We don't care. We're basically sanctioning terrorism by the governors of these states and saying, you've got to do this. Here's the thing. Here's what I want to equate it with. I want to equate this with how easy it is to get you to do so. How many Christians have you ever heard say, oh, I'll die before they put that mark on me? Oh, no, it ain't going to happen. I'll go to the grave without it. They're going to have to cut my head off. But they can get you to put a mask on voluntarily, saying, you can't walk in my store and buy groceries without it. Mm-hmm. You can't walk in and it's only certain stores that you can walk in, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Folks, I'm going to tell you, if it's that easy to get you to voluntarily do something that's technically bad for your health, you're going to stand in line to get marked. I'll guarantee it. I'll guarantee it. Now, like I say, I don't want to equate wearing a mask with a mark. What I'm saying is, look how easy it is to get you to do it. Mm-hmm. Look at how easy it is to get you to do it. I haven't put one on yet, but I haven't been that many places. Tomorrow might be a different story because, but mine will not be what they expect it to be. I guarantee you mine will not be what they expect it to be. You're right, Jay. Fear does cause people to do stupid stuff. It causes you to do things you wouldn't normally do. That's why I consider what's happening in places like Delaware and Kentucky and Wisconsin and Michigan state-sanctioned terrorism. That's all it is. Christians, you wanted to live in biblical times? You have arrived. You have arrived. But I've got good news for you. Might not be what you're expecting. I've got good news for you. I can calm down for a minute. And while I get myself together and get composed just a little bit, we're going to move on to Psalm 91. I like Psalm 91. But when Jay, believers should agree with each other. We should have a united front. Mm-hmm. We should, biblical term is we are all of one accord, right?
That's it.
We can disagree about the dumb stuff and the little stuff, but we need to agree about the important stuff. Psalm 91 is a psalm about comfort and protection, but there's some things in there when I started really digging into this, I thought, man, that's not what it's about. And as I looked and looked and looked for things that actually agreed with this psalm in other parts of the scriptures, I couldn't find it. So I started looking in other places, and now I can find Christian writing that agree with the way Psalm 91 is typically translated, but I couldn't find any ancient Hebraic writing that agreed with the way Psalm 91 is translated. So I started looking through, ancient Hebrew sources, New Jewish sources, other things, and I realized this might not have been translated exactly properly. So I did my own translation. What you're going to read while I calm down is my translation of Psalm 91. So from there to there.
You who stay in the covering of the Almighty, who spend the night in his protection, I will say, Jehovah is my shelter, my stronghold. I will trust in him. When he snatches you from the bird trap and from the plagues, he will gather you in his arms and protect you with his covering, and you will be safe. You will not be afraid of things that you dread at the night, or the arrows that fly towards you during the day, not the plagues that come with gloom and doom, or the destruction that leaves complete waste in during the noontime. 1,000 will die beside you, and 10,000 will die to your right side. But that will not come close to you with your own eyes. You will see the reward of the evil ones. For you, Jehovah, my shelter most high, is where I live. Evil will not meet you by accident. No plague will come into where you live. For his messengers will give instruction to you, so that you are able to guard your ways. If you decide to go your own way, it will be out of their hands if you strike a rock with your foot. You will set your foot on the lion or the serpent and trample them under your feet. Because of his love, I will escape. I will place him above everything because he knows my name. He will call for me and I will respond. I will be with him during trouble and will draw close and honor him. With a long life, I will satisfy and see my salvation.
Okay. Normally, you're going to read something in here about angels guarding you. But David didn't write that like that. Even the newer Hebrew translations, such as the JPS, talk about, in verse 12, how the angels will guard you. But it didn't make sense to me. Why would you send a messenger? Because that's what an angel is. And David had other words that he could have chosen as guardians or protectors, that type of thing. He could have used other language, but he still used messenger. Why would you send a messenger to guard someone? It just didn't make sense to me. So as I'm reading this and I'm looking for other places. Now the only other place is in Matthew chapter 4, where it talks about Yeshua being in the desert with Satan. More on that in a second, because it just didn't set well with me. Didn't agree. Scripture doesn't contradict itself. Scripture's right. So there must be something with the way we're looking at it, the way we're thinking about it, the way we're translating it. And a lot of times people get hooked up on what's known as hermeneutics. And hermeneutics is nothing other than interpretation. How should we interpret this? Does the word "the" here really point to that? Should we interpret that David actually knew what he was talking about? Yeah, we should interpret David knew what he was talking about. David was a prophet. He hears directly from the Almighty. Mm-hmm. Now, if I give somebody a message, okay, if I tell you it's time for supper, let's get supper started, right? It's your choice whether you start supper or whether you don't start supper, right? Mm-hmm. Some days you've got other things going on. Right. See, Tina's watching too. They all got their own. Tina. I can see this watch party now. We love you guys, but David understood this. David knows he's choosing his words very wisely, and I think he's got a little play on words going on here. Think about where in Scripture it says if you warn somebody and they accept your warning, you're safe. But if you warn them and something happens to them, right? Mm-hmm. Their blood's no longer on your hands.
That's it.
That is out of Ezekiel chapter 3. It says, "Son of man, I have appointed you as a watchman for the house of Israel. When you hear a word from my mouth, give them a warning from me. When I say to the wicked, you will surely die, and you do not warn him, his blood's on your hands if he dies. But if you warn him, you don't have anything to worry about." He's talking about a messenger. He says, look, if you deliver this message exactly like I say, and something happens, right? Something happens to them, it's on them. That's why I chose the words I chose. Now, I'm not going to get into a long Hebrew lesson here, okay? But there is a word in Hebrew in Psalm 91, and it's always been translated, I shouldn't say always, it has recently been translated as nasa, and it means to lift up. right? To hold you up, to carry you, to bear your burden. But there's another word in Hebrew that's spelled exactly the same way, but if you use it in a different context, it's pronounced nashah. And it means to go astray or go your own way. So think about this verse. If you decide to go your own way, it's no longer something they can control. It's out of their hands. I think David has a play on words here. I think what David's saying is the instructions are this. If you don't follow the instructions, we're done. They've warned you. They've told you not to go that way. Now, some people, I hope, would understand that when a messenger delivers a message, you have a choice. Just like, why don't we cook supper? You can either do it or not, right?
Right.
You can do what you do with the information, what you're going to do with the information. But other people are going to say, how does this fit with the commentaries concerning Matthew 4:6? He shall command his angels concerning you, and upon their hands they will lift you up, so that you do not strike your foot against a stone. But what did Yeshua, what did Jesus say back? What was his response? Was it, well, I can jump down there and the angels will hold me? That's not what he said, is it? Mm-mm. He, in fact, did exactly what my interpretation, what my translation said. He took the information and he processed it, and he still decides to follow the Father's instructions, God's instructions, and instead he goes back to Deuteronomy, right? It says, Deuteronomy 6:16, you are not to test Jehovah your God, as you tested him at Massah. Now, that, of course, refers back to Exodus 17. Moses cried out to Jehovah, saying, what am I supposed to do with these people? They're about ready to stone me. And the Almighty says, you walk before the people, take the elders of Israel with you, along with your staff, which you stuck in the river, and take it in your hand and go. Before I will stand before you, or behold, I will stand before you, and there upon the rock in Horeb you are to strike the rock. So they tested the Almighty, Moses delivered. Satan tests Yeshua, Yeshua delivers. Didn't say a word about Psalm 91. All about the angels trying to protect him, bypasses that because he has the information. He understands what the information is. He understands what the instructions are. Don't test God. Because, even 2,000 years ago, they understood, gravity works the same way all the time. If you jump off this mountain, you're going to hit the bottom. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you are. Do yourself a favor and don't test the Almighty. It's not a good thing to do. Why didn't he mention Psalm 91? Of course, he knew what it said, but Yeshua knew what it said the way David had written it, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Yeshua understood perfectly. Now, of course, this gets into the whole guardian angel thing, right? And here's the thing, okay? Your Uncle Fred or your Aunt Frances or whoever it is does not automatically become your guardian angel when they pass. Okay, when they die, when they rest in the dust of the earth, however you want to say it, they do not automatically become your guardian angel. That's not the way it works. All over Scripture, we see that's not the way it works. Okay. If you want to know more about angels and why we use what we use, here's the thing. I see your comments, Jay. Here's the thing. You could go back. I've done extensive teaching on angels. It's on probably in Spreaker. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's actually a teaching I did there from Messianic Delaware all about the subject of angels. So they're there. Go look at them. Everything that is you need to understand and more is there. Now, I could be wrong the way I've translated this. I see Rebecca's joined us too. I could be wrong the way
Hi,
I've
Rebecca.
translated this, but I don't think so, because there's too many places in Scripture, there's too many witnesses out of Scripture that agree with, the way Yeshua responded, and there's too many places that David and other writers tell us this is what's going on. And I just barely scratched the surface on this. If there is a writing out there that predates the return from Babylon, let me know. Let me know. You can, if you're on Facebook, you can message me. If you're on one of the podcast platforms, you can make a comment on it. I will get it. I don't care if you email me at jerry@givegod90.com, and I will get that message. If you know of a writing that specifically predates the return from Babylon, that pictures an angel as anything other than delivering a message, let me know. Even when we're told that Joshua meets the angel as they're entering the land, he's delivering a message. He says, look, I'm here as in this job description. Here's what I'm going to do. Wasn't anything there about protecting anybody. He had a job to do, and he was going to do it. That is plain and simple. When I was looking at the ancient Hebraic way of looking at this, and I was looking at what their writings were, either in the Talmud or whatever it was, I came across something really interesting. And it was written by Chaya Sarah Silberberg, and she was writing for Chabad.org, which is a Jewish website, of course. And she writes, the concept of guardian angels is not part of Jewish theology. Now, the Hebrew concept of an angel is a divine being that does exactly what God tells it to, right? It delivers messages. One aspect of it is they have no free will. So even if they came and delivered a message and we were going to do something else anyway, they can't just reach out and grab us and stop us. Their job is to deliver the message. They can't protect us any more than that. Mm-hmm. The whole concept of guardian angels actually begins to enter into even Hebrew thought after the Babylonian exile. It's polytheistic, what I consider polytheistic Greek thinking. Because now, instead of one God, you have all these other gods that you can come onto. Remember my saying, if you have a great big rock, how many gods does it take to move a rock? As many as you can call on, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds kind of like Elisha battling the prophets of the other Lord, doesn't it? So, think about these things, folks. This is the stuff that I spend time on. And you think that I spend time watching Netflix at night? We do. But still, this is the stuff that's worth taking your time and asking the questions. And all you have to do is say, why does it say this? Why did David choose this word when he had other words he could choose from? He understood this. A lot of things happened after the Babylonian exile, and not all of them were good. Mm-hmm. Most of them were bad. We get a lot of pagan influence. Okay? Polytheistic thinking, more than one God, is part of that. If you read carefully, the prophets were not necessarily always battling people wanting to do their own thing and go their own way. The prophets, whether it was Isaiah or Micah, Amos, what they were really battling was this other concept that comes in that says, oh, look, we can call on whatever God we need to call on. And they're saying, no, you get one. You get one. Even today, people talk about, oh, I need to pray to this person or pray to that person. Pray. Here's where I'm going to make my Catholic listeners mad. We get to pray to Mary. Why? Why? It doesn't do any good. It doesn't do any good. You get one to choose from. You get one. Make it the right one. My rant is over. Do you have anything you want to add on to that?
No, I'm good, thank you.
We don't have a choice when it comes to these things. You want to live in biblical times, folks? You are there. Mm-hmm. You are there. It's our responsibility to get this right. It's our responsibility to understand what we're taught, look at the examples we have, and get it right. I don't know what else I can say. But you know what makes it easier is if you know what the instructions are in Scripture and you follow the instructions. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Ladies and gentlemen, I absolutely appreciate everyone spending their time. All the great comments tonight.
Yes.
Everything is, doing what it's doing, right? The world is going. The good thing is, and I said this, I put this out for the folks on a private message system we have. I said, look, I don't know what's going on, but Israel began their lockdown about Passover, right? Mm-hmm. And they are counting down the days. Currently, we're counting down what's considered counting the Omer, counting down to Shavuot, Christian Pentecost. And we're told to count these days down. What are we counting down to? I don't know what the Almighty's got going on, but I bet it's going to be big. I bet it's going to be special, and I have a feeling that this year is going to be something great. I don't know. I know somebody just this morning was talking about there's going to be a great revival. I'm not sure if she understands how great this revival is going to be, but I think that's probably coming. Whatever it's going to be, guarantee you it will bring glory to the Almighty, or He wouldn't have let all this mess happen.
That's right.
We have that responsibility. We have been given the instructions and the examples on how to carry this torch. Let's carry it. I hate to give this advertisement, but you know what? Tomorrow in Delaware, if you live in Delaware, there is a freedom rally there. I suggest you use the little bit of freedom you got left as Christian, as Jew, as persecuted American, and you attend peacefully, make your voice heard, let them know under no uncertain terms, we will not be shut up. Mm-hmm. We, not only as Christians, Jews, but as American citizens, we have been guaranteed certain rights by our Constitution. Those rights are given to us by our Creator. Mm-hmm. It is not un-Christian, it is not un-Jewish to go and be part of conquering evil with good. Okay? You are commanded by Solomon in Proverbs to overcome evil with good. Make sure we do this wisely, and make sure that...
And what is it? It's Open Delaware?
It's Delaware Against Excessive Quarantine, I think is the title of what they are. And you can find, just search for Delaware Against Excessive Quarantine. You'll find it. It's there. Utilize those things. We don't have a choice. Time is far too short. When 2,000 years ago, the disciples in occupied Jerusalem, look what they did. Mm-hmm. Why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we making sense of this and saying we can take this to a whole new level? Because I'm telling you, it's got to come to it. It's got to come to it.
It does.
The Almighty has put us here for such a time as this. Don't let Him down. Don't let yourself down. Are we done? Can I be done now? Because seriously, I get wound up about this kind of stuff, and y'all know it. Y'all know it. Because it's so easy for me to see it, and I'm not that smart. And if I can see it, somebody who's a lot more brilliant than me should be able to go, you know what? This is not right. We need to do something. So don't forget, folks, don't forget, everything we do here, hopefully, is to convince you to live the way that your Creator designed you to live. Till next time, have a blessed,
and thanks for watching us.
Thank you so much for watching us. I got to hit the right button down here, though. There we go. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe week. Ooh, chicken.
I didn't see all this earlier.
It's because it was dark in here earlier.
I didn't give Sean his yoo-hoo.